the amount of times where people have said, and this probably is the key one, no one's given me an opportunity to do blur. We're literally living, this is a digital space. You can almost get your start from anything. You don't need to be given an opportunity. Create your own opportunity. Almost everyone who is here at the moment has done it themselves. There will be definitely instances where people are hard done by. But if you haven't tried, then why are you expecting someone to help you? Help yourself first. And then, show us that you care enough to do something of your own accord. Because that's what I think a lot of this is.
Okay, so we move on from the IEM Katowice B stream at Guff, and this is where you, again, start to seem like you're getting more and more involved with the fold at ESL, and you'd already be aware sort of that you're going to move to Sydney. But before you do that, you go and host this Crown COD Invitational. And actually, from now looking back in hindsight, this is probably one of the bigger tournaments that you actually hosted, like initially, right? Because, you haven't always been one of the top hosts in Australia, or I suppose you were, even by virtue of the fact that there wasn't that many people hosting, but you certainly aren't what you were or what you are today back then.
Yeah, look, I was hosting a lot of stuff, but nothing was very big, right? There was no big stuff to host. And if you weren't doing League of Legends, which was essentially the biggest content, then yeah, you weren't doing all that much. So I went to do COD at Crown. So that was obviously the second of the two big Crown events that the ESL did. The first one, obviously, the Counter-Strike, and then Call of Duty the second time. It was actually a pretty cool event. It had Millennium and Optic come out. So essentially looking to replicate, I guess, what happened for CSGO. And instead of Desk Host and whatnot, obviously I wasn't that big into like the console COD scene at the time. And I was stage host. So yeah, it was cool. It was I think it actually got quite a lot of viewers. I got to was that the one where I got to interview the Schnitz dude? Was it that one? Or was
yes, that was, I think, yeah.
That was kind of exciting. The man himself, Mr. Schnitz. And I got to talk to him about my love for the Swiss Schnitz, which is definitely my preferred Schnitz wrap.
I don't even know what a Swiss Schnitz is. It sounds like something that's very hard to say.
Yeah, it is. It is really hard to say. That's why I have to slow it right down. But it was a big event, and I obviously enjoyed it. I fucked up once. I did most.
It was a big fuck up though. Like, let's talk about that.
It was a big fuck up. So obviously I didn't know the overseas COD guides at all. I didn't watch competitive console COD. I had played competitive COD on PC, and I followed like the Australian scene back in the day, but I really didn't follow anything outside of Australia for Call of Duty on console. So I was interviewing two of the overseas guys, and I called one the wrong name. But
you called one the other.
Yeah, I called one the other, right? The saving grace was that I picked up on it immediately, and was kind of like, I said something along the lines of, oh, sorry, I put you on the wrong side, like indicating that I didn't really, like, this wasn't really my thing, and I was just, trying to do my best. So it was probably the most considerate Reddit had ever been. Like,
in a Reddit shitpost thread, yeah.
Yeah, someone posted it, and literally most of the comments were actually like, oh, it was okay. He obviously didn't really know who they were, and made fun of himself and tried to fix it up. And like, it actually played out as probably as well as it could have. So I did feel pretty bad. It's the sort of thing, like, when you go up, particularly stage hosting, right? And I don't think we've really spoken about this. But I actually think stage hosting is probably the hardest of all of the casting aspects. Like
Talent work.
yeah, all of the talent stuff. Now, it's got pros and cons to it, right? The pro of being a stage host is that you can go up and you can host events that you don't know as much about the game for, right? And there's a reason for that, because stage hosting is a bit of a skill. It doesn't, just because you can sit there and talk about a game doesn't mean that you can go up and host a stage for that game. So you can't just pluck someone from a game and throw them up to be a stage host, because there's actually quite a lot going on. And a lot of what stage hosting is the not necessarily always the talking, but it's the staging, it's the moving people around, it's the controlling of people on a stage. There's a lot of those aspects to it. But the problem is that you're essentially on your own. So if you're on a desk, if you and I are casting together, Jordan, if I'm kind of running out of thoughts or losing my way, I can just pass it off to you and you'll pick it up.
Yep.
And it gives me time to do the same. If I'm a desk host and I'm losing my way, I can come up with a quick question and throw it across, or I've got a page, full of notes or something in front of me. It's not a weird thing to check down, read your notes, go through something, write something down. That's all fine. When you're on a stage, maybe you have a palm card if you're lucky, but it's just you. So there's a point where you have to decide, am I going off the top of my head? Am I reading? Am I stopping and pausing? And it's far more noticeable on a stage with a mic. So you've got like a split second where you're maybe not 100% sure what you're going to say next, or you kind of came up with like a script that you were going to say, but they're really just dot points because you don't want to script it too much. Because we never have auto cues, right? Like I've never had an auto cue in esports. I've never had anything scripted. There are definitely comps and stuff where they get to do that, but there's a lot more budget involved because there's a lot of money that goes into scripting a show. And it's an entirely different skill as well to read off an auto cue. So yeah, you make your script and you're trying to find the balance between reading off what you wrote, remembering, and just going with the flow, and obviously not fucking up. And at that point, I just was on the wrong side. Instead of checking, I just said what I thought, and then as soon as I said it, I realized it was wrong. And you can do that in casting as well, but it's far less of a big thing in casting, I think, than it is on a stage. Particularly if you're with that person, right? Like I said something stupid in Contenders comparing Mini to Mini a few weeks ago, right? But you're there to correct me on the spot, and Mini's not there. Neither of the Minis are there to say you're an idiot. So you can kind of just move through it. Yeah, it's dumb, but you can move through it. But on a stage, it doesn't work like that. So stage hosting, I actually find to be the toughest. They're the longest days by far. As we've learned, we can probably talk about later, even the rehearsals for stage hosting, quite often, if you're casting talent, you'll be out at dinner, but the stage host will be back rehearsing the open to the show,
the close
of the show,
trophy lift, etc.
Yeah, all of those sorts of things. So it's really a very different thing. So that's why when you look at guys like Red Eye, who predominantly do it and have done it for like any number of games around the world, it is really quite a skill. So I know we took a bit of a tangent there, but that was a bit of a funny one. But I'm still here, Jordan, so we managed to get through it clearly. Yep. But I do kind of think that we got less interviews out of them for the rest of the show because of that.
Maybe that is the case.
Yeah, I think that was the case. We didn't get interviews from some of them again until the finals. So sorry.
Oh, well. Not a big deal. Although I think, people will be listening to this and thinking, it sounds kind of easy, right? I would challenge anyone that's thinking that to write themselves a script and try to recite it back to the camera. Make it a 2-minute long script. Make it 150 words. Yeah. Try and recite it back to the camera without looking at it and see if you can do that. Because I tell you, it's not as easy as it looks.
Yeah, on cue as well.
Yeah, so it's like
you're not in control of when you start. It's just like,
You
all
just got
right,
to go.
30 seconds, camera moves, 5, 4, 3, 2, boom, go.
Yep.
And like the lights turn on and you're like, what was I saying again?
Yeah, that's the hardest thing is like sometimes 5 seconds before you're about to start, you know this countdown is coming, you're hearing it in your ear, and you're like, oh shit, I've forgotten how I was going to start this segment. And then you have
How
to,
was
in
I
that
doing
5
it?
seconds, think of something new or remember what you were going to do.
Yeah.
And that's where things just start to go a bit haywire. So certainly a skill that I think is fairly underappreciated.
It's rough. It's real rough. So, and the funny thing is that I also had like practice to script for this, and I think that's part of the problem was for that show I had scripted a lot, and I don't script as much anymore. I just have talking points more so that I want to go through. So
That can help.
yeah, I think for me, like I like a script if I could have a auto cue, but because we never do, fully scripting is I feel worse than talking points. Maybe I might want to script like the first 10 to 15 seconds or thereabouts in my mind, like, hey, welcome to blah blah blah. This is a huge event because blah 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 blah, blah. And then from there you're just talking about, hey, prize pool, hey, here are the teams, hey, this is what today's about. It's going to be pretty exciting. Let's take a look at yesterday. I don't know. Like it's it's definitely, I feel safer on a casting desk. I think that's the
I do as well.
you feel naked out on the stage by yourself.
No headset on, you know, you just have to hold the mic as well. So
yeah, there's no push. Like I never have a button that I can push to talk to the director or whatever when you're on stage.
I have this thing like where when I'm holding the mic, my hand gets a bit shaky because I always have a shaky hand just in general. But if I'm holding a mic and I'm on camera, it starts to like, you can actually see it visibly. I don't think many people really notice, but
you don't notice.
It feels really weird when you're doing it. And you just, so one of those things that gets in your head, you're doing your intro, you're talking or whatever, you're asking your interview questions and you're like, people are going to see my hand shaking. And then that's a train of thought that you really can't afford to be thinking about when you're trying to figure out what you're going to ask
next. Like the adrenaline pumping through you, right, to do it. And it's just, anyway, it's just one of those things. I'd love to do a whole other thing about stage hosting because I think it's something that we're probably lacking in.
Definitely lacking in Australia,
yeah, which is why I get to do it all the time. Not that I don't love doing it, but with Miles not here, who is a crazy talented mofo, like incredibly talented. It's a struggle to find people to step up for that. So
there aren't that many people that can do it. Anyway, that's a discussion topic that we will, I'm sure, touch on at a later date as well. What I want to go into next, Ben, is one of the more interesting parts of your job in esports, and that was moving to Sydney. Now, obviously, this is quite a big deal for someone your age at the time. I think you would have probably just turned 30, if I remember correctly, your 30th birthday party, which was ruined by some interesting stuff happening at Guff Brisbane. But that's something that we probably won't touch too much on.
Story.
It's a whole different story. But yeah, so you would have just turned 30 or maybe a little bit after that. Either way, you already have a house in Brisbane, you've got a mortgage, you've got a long-term partner, and you're essentially being asked to uproot your entire life to this point to move to Sydney for an esports job that you've probably been working towards for the better part of 4 years, 5 years at this point, but it's not necessarily anything guaranteed in the long term. So what's kind of going through your mind when you're contemplating this move to Sydney?
Yeah, it was a weird one because I guess I kind of knew that it might happen. And as I think we alluded to in the first part of this, I'd spoken to Nick at PAX at the end of 2015, and we discussed that maybe there would be an opportunity. And then the opportunity came up, and it was kind of like, hey, do you want to come down? You're right. I'd probably in the previous 2 years bought a unit in Brisbane with Mel, and obviously that was the smart decision was to buy property. Brisbane, probably not that expensive, but on the salary I was on, that was a large portion of my income was paying mortgage. And this was supposed to be the thing that, you just pay it off, you're in a good spot. And then all of a sudden, Elle's still working in Brisbane and I'm moving down to Sydney to work for not that much money. Certainly uh, difficult, and I did for like 6 months pay rent in Sydney and pay mortgage in Brisbane, which I still have to do. But obviously, the difference is that now we have tenants, so it's not as big a deal. But at the time, Mel was still living there, so that was pretty rough. I was lucky though. Nick was pretty good about it. I for the first, I don't know, like 3 months or so, stayed at the house with the other ESL guys. So there was for a number of years a house where a bunch of us, or a bunch of them, stayed together. And it had a room or two that you could, if you came down to cast an event or were there for something to work, that you could stay there, which was awesome. So they were very kind. I stayed there for about 3 months. But I didn't have much. Like, I'd gone from my own place with all of my things to relying on people. Yeah, a shoebox, relying on people to drive me around. I didn't even have my computer. I didn't have anything. I had a suitcase first time. I did fly back and forward like a fair few times in the first 6 months. So it wasn't that bad in that regard. And eventually I went back and grabbed my car and filled it up with a bunch of stuff and came down. And I think that's probably when you ended up coming down as well full time, Jordan.
Yeah. So that would have been like June, a few months later. So you would have stayed in this ESL house, what we called the Vimy house, which was really, I think, it was kind of a transition phase, really, almost, for the ESL crew, because a lot of the employees were still, at that time, obviously not employed, but there was obviously a bit of a ramp up in work coming because the ESL deal had kind of come through and that kind of thing. So a lot of hiring needed to happen, and as a result of that, a lot of people needed to move to Sydney. And to sort of help in that transition, this kind of concept of a house where people would come and live while they found their feet in Sydney was a thing. And it obviously helped when a lot of the events were happening, right? Too.
I feel like it was almost needed at the time, because it was real tough to get going. And it was good for me to be able to, I didn't have to pay to live there for the 8 weeks or something I was there. So I saved a little bit of money that I really did need, because
deposits and stuff like that.
Yeah. And then I had the joy of you sleeping on my floor every weekend, this little room. And then there was a space on the floor about big enough for an elfish guy to sleep on.
Yeah, I think you got to give the context of how big this room actually was, because, put it this way, you couldn't have fit a queen bed in that room. There was a single bed, which was Ben's bed, and then there was like a mattress that was on the floor, which is where I slept. So if Ben wanted to get off the bed, he would step onto my bed to get off the bed, and then the door was right next to me. So it was a very, very small room. And the reason that we did this, obviously, was because I lived in Brisbane at the time, and I was coming down to cast Season 1 of ANZ Champs, which you were also casting at the same time. And so at the time, the money involved in esports was not that great. There wasn't budgets for hotels. I don't even remember if I got paid for these, to be honest, Ben, but we did it for the love of the game. And 5 weeks in a row, I was there in Sydney, sleeping on Sandman's floor.
Sleeping on my floor as I slept someone else's place. Like, it was a small room, but it was like a 6-bedroom place or a 5-bedroom place.
It was a huge house, yeah.
Yeah, so it just happened to be that obviously the one that no one wanted to be in was the smallest. So that obviously makes sense. But, you have a laugh now, but at the time it was we almost needed it, right? Like, it would have been real tough to move down otherwise. I didn't really know anyone in Sydney. Like, I knew the ESL guys, but not that well. I had done events with them, maybe 4 or 5 events over the previous 18 months. But it's different to working with them all the time. So anyway, they were it was good. It was even though it was stressful, it was nice to be able to just rock up and at least have a bed, right? And
it's the kind of thing that you look back on in hindsight and you think, I would never do that again. But
no, I don't want to do that again.
You can't really say that, because if you hadn't done that, you wouldn't be in this position. So maybe if you weren't in this position, you would do it again. Either way, it was tough times, rough times, and I think things have gotten better since then for anyone that's hoping to get into esports. Those are the dark times that have passed of sleeping on people's bedroom floors. We at least get hotels.
We
now.
Moved up. We got to share a place with Whole different story.
Whole different story. Anyway, we talk about all this stuff happening. One of the cool things that happened when you first sort of moved to ESL, I don't know how quickly this was. I don't know if it was actually 2016 or 2017 where you went to Katowice with Nick, but I think it was 2016. We'll talk about it now anyway.
Yeah, I think it must have been 2016, and it must have been relatively early.
Yeah.
But it was because obviously it was we were going to do Wargaming League or something in Australia as part of like a global thing. And I had some experience with World of Tanks because, of course, I'd gone to Taipei like the year before. And I don't think they had done that much with tanks in Oz before then. So, yeah, went to Katowice. Going to Katowice for 2 days of meetings as opposed to going to Katowice for
an esports event.
IEM.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the pinnacle of esports events, or to sit in a room like at a meeting room at a hotel for 2 days. So it literally took us 36 hours to get there. And then it must have been really early because I feel like I think I flew from Brisbane, by the way.
Maybe.
So I think that's how it played out. Anyway, 36 hours to get there. Got there. It's actually really nice. I was like, wow, this is really cool. And I had a great time. And then I got really sick on the second day of meetings. So I literally flew for 2 days of meetings. I don't know if it was food poisoning. It was something. It was something that it probably took me about a week to get over. We were there for 2 days. I missed like the second half of the second day. And then we went to Cologne and checked out the ESL offices, and I was still sick. And then I just remember going out for beers. Like, I could eat, but I can't keep anything in me. And we go out for beers with Uber and all of the ESL casting guys that were living in Cologne at the time at this club that they used to go to that was like €2 beers or something. And they just had a tab, and every time you finished one, they would just give you another. It was actually fantastic. Then just having it all come out of me the other way, like an hour later, it was great. And then flew back, didn't eat on the plane for another 36 hours. And it probably took me a full week to get through it. So
something bad happened to you. That's all we're going to say.
It wasn't great. But we did get wargaming at the time. And yeah, that was cool. And that sort of, I think, helped saw the real Go-Go Gadget come on board. So.
Yeah. And me as well. I was hired for
Alex.
tanks.
Alex, you owe me. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah.
Any number of reasons.
Yeah, probably not the only one. All right. Well, that aside, then I think we sort of see you move to Sydney. You start to really integrate into ESL. One of the cool things that we also did early on in the piece was the Overwatch launch celebration, which now, as we know, we both obviously ended up casting Overwatch Contenders. But at the time, it was kind of like where Valorant is right now. Everyone was kind of keen to cast Overwatch. Everyone wanted to see something, do something. And this, I believe, was on the day or the day after Overwatch was actually released. We had this event in the ESL studio. So I remember it might have actually been the first event. I don't remember if that was the first event or the Call of Duty event in the ESL studio.
Call of Duty was first. Call of Duty happened before I came to Sydney.
Right.
But the studio was like not fully finished, I think.
Right.
Anyway, it wasn't like public open finished by that point. And then we did Overwatch in like May, like first week of May of that year. And that was actually a really cool event. That was probably even still to now one of the for me one of the highlight events in the studio. You think that so many people came out, had so many influencers, lots of people in the crowd. I think it was just really nice. It was a good day.
Definitely.
Even if we said May was Japanese.
Yeah, that was an interesting time trying to figure out what nationality May was. I think we were trying to make like a Great Wall of China
it's
joke.
Particularly obvious.
Yeah.
But at the time for you and I, it was not. And legitimately, I reckon we got access to the game 2 weeks before that, maybe.
I remember playing like a beta weekend, I think.
Yeah.
Because we got keys given to us by Ellison. Which obviously, now in hindsight, the intention obviously was to push us into this event, I guess. But we had a little bit of time, but not a huge amount. Either way, good event, was fun, and just one step on the magical journey that Ben's been going on. Another one of the events, or one of the key parts of your early career in ESL, was Zen League. Now, for those that don't remember, this was initially, the Australian APAC kind of version of Pro League in a way. It was a tier above ANZ Champs. It featured Asian teams as well, and we were producing it obviously from ESL Studios in Sydney, and it was kind of in association with Crown. This was when Crown was sort of still involved with things. A lot of what you did early on was, I assume, sort of trying to get this on the ball and sort of rolling along quite nicely.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time in Melbourne with the guys down there trying to come up with a plan for it. Obviously, it worked for a bit, and then we changed it up. I would love to have seen it like go further, but I guess it's just one of those things, right? You kind of try something new. I was always kind of, for me, very early days of learning sales was kind of, people would say, oh, we could, this is going to, they would try and look at sporting budgets, or, what other sort of, like a team would get, or a sporting league would get, and then try and apply it to esports. But it doesn't really work like that. So early days for me, I was kind of like, oh, okay, cool. Maybe we could do all these things. But it's a different kettle of fish. And as I think we've seen a few different parties come and go across the space. I think particularly because they kind of overestimated how much you could sell stuff for, and underestimated how much stuff could cost. Whilst the trick really is to do the opposite, right? Overestimate how much it costs and underestimate how much you can sell it for, and then find that as your worst base point, and then go from there. So yeah, it's a shame that the Zen League with the stuff didn't go any further. I'm sure eventually we'll get back to point that's like that. I know like Pro League kind of filled that void as well and did a pretty good job of it. So I don't know, what you're the big Asian CSGO guy, Jordan. Do you think that if it had continued, that Asian CSGO would have been in a better spot, or do you think it'd still be where it is now?
I don't recall exactly like what the prize pools were and that kind of thing, but I think if there was domestic Asian LAN similar to what we had for the early Zen League seasons or the early Pro League seasons, I actually think it probably would have been the biggest tournament in the Asian scene for Counter-Strike, if it would have continued on the trajectory that it was intended to as well, Ben. Obviously, if you remember, there was some grand plans, I suppose, we'll put it that way. I would have liked to have seen it continue. We only got 2 seasons out of it, and it was 2 seasons of really good Counter-Strike. And I think if it would have persisted to this day, it definitely would have been quite successful. It would have, obviously you sort of say the ESL Pro League has kind of filled the void, and it has to an extent, but it's not quite the same as having, a dedicated league that has a LAN finals that is just Asia-centric. It's, it's kind of its own thing. So I would have liked to have seen what Zen League could have become, but we'll never get to know, I guess.
One of the many things that I've spent an awful lot of time on that just didn't get there in the end. So that's what esports is. I guess that's what a lot of things are. A lot of businesses or areas of business that require pitching and coming up with concepts and trying to make new things work. And esports is very much that space where you're trying to come up with something new. Obviously, you're trying to grow the scene and the ecosystem and whatnot, and because we don't want it just to sit and be what it was in 2015, right? It's obviously come a long way, and that's part of that is coming up with things. Some of them work, some of them don't work. But yeah, that particular one wasn't my idea. I don't think someone else's idea. I tried my best. I think we all tried our best. It just in the end wasn't to be. Maybe next time.
Yeah. Anyway, a bunch of things happened since then, and here we are anyway, so we're still kind of going along quite fine. You did PAX in 2016 as well. I don't think there's that much worth really touching on, apart from the fact that you, again, lost your voice. Yep. But we did talk about that in part 1, so if you're interested in hearing that story, you might go back and jump to the previous video. Let's move on to your first international event as talent, at least from what I can remember. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but Crossfire Stars Manila this event that we went to in the Philippines was the first time that you actually went overseas as talent.
I think so. That probably makes sense because I don't think there was anything before that. So yeah, that probably sounds about right. My recollection is we had a bit of fun. It wasn't, the days weren't that long for us either, right? Because it was you and me, and it was D-Man and Momo
and Matt Andrews
and Matt Andrews. So yeah, it was. Look, I don't think we were there for that long, right? Only a few days. Did we have a couple of days in the middle?
So no, I think what happened here, Ben, was that they paid for a rest day for us. So we came and we essentially had a day off, which I think was mostly for the European guys to kind of get into the time zone. For us, it was only a couple of hours difference, 3 hours maybe, going back. So it wasn't a big deal. We just had a day off where we sort of hung around by the pool. Then there was the rehearsal day, and then there was 2 event days. So we would have been there for like 4 or 5 days maybe. And obviously
quite a long time in the, like, it's not like, definitely there's shorter events, right? And it's kind of, for me, that juxtaposition, particularly for me. I don't know if it's maybe less for you, but I certainly feel this between the events we go to, like the international events where you're talent, and then the events where that's not the case. Like, go to Manila, stay in a 5-star hotel, sit up on the rooftop at the pool, ordering calamari and
that
whatever.
Was KL, by the way.
Huh?
That was KL, the rooftop pool. Manila was the pool that was on the ground floor.
Was it?
Yep.
No.
Manila was the big golden hotel, if you remember.
Yeah. But the pool was on the roof.
Oh, okay. I guess you could say that is, yeah.
Yeah, like, as in, it was, it's not on the ground. It's not on the roof, but it's in the middle. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It was a very nice hotel.
Yes.
And and Momo's walking around filming his vlog. Hey guys, it's Momo here.
Yep.
Just you going to the gym or whatever he does. And I'm like, wow.
He got sunburned as fuck from memory.
Yeah, I wonder why. And yeah, it's kind of like you've got those events where you stay in this beautiful room, and it, they pay for your meals or whatever, and it's, all those things. And then the other ones are like sharing a room with Elfish Guy, and I don't know. Like, it's just...
It was a bit of a contradiction, right? You look at May 2016, where I'm flying to Sydney, not getting paid, and then I'm sleeping in Sandman's bedroom floor, versus October of 2016, where we've been paid to fly to Manila, stay in 5-star hotels, do a couple of days worth of work, and then get a bonus on top of that, which is worth, a couple of $1,000s here or there. It depends on what your agreement was. But, it's kind of insane that the value that was presumably provided by us to a show like this versus the value that was provided to a show here is like so drastically different, even though the job we're doing is exactly the same for all intents and purposes.
Yeah, because they're literally just looking quite often for someone, English speaking talent, like, and they just it's cheaper to get us sometimes to fly from Australia than it is from Europe or whatever. And I guess our rates back then were pretty reasonable to us. Yeah, it
was a good event, and it wasn't long before we went to the second international event. Now, this one was the ROG Masters in KL, the first ROG Masters in KL that we attended, which was the one in the convention center where we were staying in Traders, and this is where the rooftop pool was, the bar on the roof.
This was the rooftop bar,
But it had a pool as well.
With a pool in the middle.
Which didn't seem like a great idea.
It didn't seem like a good idea. It's literally a bar with a pool you need to walk around.
But when you're in Malaysia, do whatever. Fuck it.
It just didn't matter. That was the same year, right? So we went to do Counter-Strike. There was also Dota on, if I recall correctly. And I think we had Red Eye as the stage host. Does that sound right?
That's right. Yep. He was stage hosting both Dota and CS. I guess to an extent he was probably more so there for Dota than he was for CS, but by extension he just did the CS stage hosting as well.
It's normally how it works. You rarely get a different stage host if you have 2 games, as we were alluding to earlier.
Yeah. So tell me about the time. Obviously, you went there as the desk host, right? So it was myself and Ian casting, and then we had some local Malaysian talent that you were not altogether too pleased to have on the analyst desk.
I probably no. Look, it for a lot of them, it was kind of like their first. They kind of jumped from doing a lot of home stuff to moving up to that sort of a bigger event. And I guess for us, it was one of my bigger desk hosting gigs, even though I had done a lot of desk hosting. And normally the way it works is that everyone kind of brings their sort of what's your expertise. So for you guys, you're just kind of CS experts and obviously knew the Aussie teams. For me, it was I was the desk host and knew the Aussie teams and Aussie CS a little bit. And kind of the hope is that if you bring on local talent, they know the local teams. And that wasn't necessarily the case. And the guy I kind of flipped out. The guy was like, oh, well, I don't know any of these teams. I'm like, well, why are you here? Like, I was pretty frustrated. Like, this is I felt to me at the time, I felt like this is your role. Like, what are you doing if you don't know?
I mean, it kind of is, right?
Yeah. Have you researched these teams? Because I feel like you're supposed to be doing Asian CS. We bring Aussie CS to an event with Asian. And I understand that Asian CS is not that cut and dry necessarily. But I was a little bit frustrated at the time. And I probably verbalized that. But it was only like a 5-second rant. And I was like, okay, whatever. Let's work through it. And we got there in the end, right? So the show was fine. We had a good time, and we got to go to the rooftop bar.
Yeah, the rooftop bar certainly was, I think, the highlight of that trip, and something that we went back to a couple of times when we went to KL. It
looks events. Nice. It's over. Like, the view is of the Petronas Towers, right? Which is like the
2 towers.
Yeah, the towers. The quite
the KL towers.
Yeah, exactly. So, it was cool. It was a nice place to stay, and again, one of those situations where, we're staying somewhere nicer than normal. Though that is one we did stay. You and I shared a room on that trip, right?
Yeah. I think most people shared a room on that trip.
Yeah, that is the trip though where my white jacket was ruined. By Singapore Airlines, and I had to go out, and it took me like 4 months for them to give me money for it. I'd literally bought it at PAX. And we must have done the finals for like Zen League or something at PAX.
I think it was ANZ Champs, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Which probably was Zen League now that I think about it, because they sort of merged at one point.
They kind of came together. So we did that, and I remember buying it from like the shops at Crown. And then we must have gone like a week later or something to Malaysia. And it was raining when we got there. And literally my whole suitcase was wet. And obviously the jacket's white, and the inside of it's got like, I don't know, like blue, I don't know, whatever, stitching in pockets and stuff, and it just soaked through the whole thing. So we ended up getting a new one in the end. They gave me the money for it, and I just went and bought another one. So
I remember having to wait at the airport for you actually after that event when we got back, because you were raging at someone at the airport.
It took me
you had
like
to put in like some
minutes.
sort of report or whatever.
Yeah, 40 minutes to put.
And I was just like, I just want to go home. We've flown overnight. I'm cooked. I think we were getting a train. I don't know. Maybe we were waiting to get an Uber together or something. But obviously, we lived together at the time.
Train at that point, I suspect, knowing you and I.
Yeah.
But it was. I was very upset because I like that jacket, and I still have one now. Obviously, got little coffee stains on it, from hanging in my office at ESL, and I spilt coffee on my hand once, and I burnt myself, and I went and the coffee. But you can't see it on camera, so it's fine.
All right. Well, lucky that. Okay, so that was toward the end of 2016 in November, and after that, there's the Christmas break and whatever. So nothing really happens until we get to 2017. But again, early in 2017, you seem to have become a bit of a jet setter at this point, and you're off to Korea. Now, this is your first time in Korea. I remember you being very unprepared. It was, I think from memory, tell me if this story is wrong, but I seem to recall you going overseas and being sort of surprised at how cold it was. You didn't have the right shoes or didn't have the right jacket or something.
It was minus 11.
Yeah.
Okay. It was minus 11. It was February in Seoul. and we went over. I was like, I got like a week, maybe less than a week notice. It's kind of like, hey, you want to come to this thing? We might need a stage host. It was Call of Duty. I'm like, heck yes, I love COD, and I really want to visit Korea. So we turn up, and there's just snow everywhere. And I'm like, oh,
And you're like, fuck, I'm from
it's
Australia.
really cold. And we're like out walking around at like 1 a.m. or something, wherever we were in Seoul. And there's snow all over the streets, and it's snowing, and there's wind chill, and I'm wearing my blue ESL hoodie. And I think I bought like a jacket that I couldn't, but I was wearing jeans. Anyway, like with the right jacket, it's probably fine. But at the time, it was very, very cold. So that was a fun event though. I did enjoy it. It was me, Josh, Miles, and I think Damo went as well. I'm not sure if there's anyone else from the production team, but it was like a Call of Duty Asia Champs thing that we did. It was from OGN Studios, which was awesome for me because obviously I'd watched all of this content that had come out of this studio in the past, and I got to go there, and I got to go and watch some League of Legends one night, the night before the show. They gave me a ticket to go and see that, and then the next day, I got to host the Call of Duty event, which was pretty fun.
And difficult,
but it was rough though.
Yeah.
It was rough. It was a rough show to host, because no one really spoke English. We weren't producing the show. Obviously, I'm in Korea, so it's not necessarily reasonable to expect everyone to speak English. But when people are trying to communicate to you through like a in-ear, like you've got one little in-ear thing that's hard enough to hear as it is, and I honestly had no idea what they were saying. So I was kind of like, hey, can you guys just get me a TV? Because you're standing on a stage, and there's no way to know when you're supposed to start. Normally, someone tells you like countdown 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go, and you do your thing, blah 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 blah. And once you're getting to the end, you're waiting for someone to tell you to throw it across to pass it to the casters. I honestly don't know what they're saying. I have no idea. All I hear is Ben and words, and I don't know if those words are like starting in 30 or whatever.
Or go.
So, yeah, like it could be anything. So eventually, after the rehearsals just didn't work, I got them to get me a TV. The benefit of the TV is that I can see when I'm on camera, right? So as soon as you come into shot, you count like 1, 2, boom, and then you can go. So that was okay. So we got through the start. But then the end, they'd moved the TV because obviously the TV was showing program. You didn't want the players to see the program because it showed gameplay. And at the end, I just had no idea. So I just started. Like this woman was waving at me from behind, and I just didn't know. And you know what? I just started closing the show and just started talking because that's all I could do. And when I look back at the thing, it was kind of tough because that we also had like an English commentary. Oh, Miles was there as well. An English commentary, Korean commentary, and you're trying to match up the two at the same time. So you're trying to, at the end of it, end of a game, you want to throw back to the host, but you need to tee up one language and the other language doing it at the same time, which is a little bit awkward because it's very difficult to be in sync. So I went back and I watched it later. It looked okay. I don't know what it was like in Korean. I'm sure they were like, this guy's an idiot. Like, what is he doing? But I genuinely had no way to know what was going on. The highlight of the show, though, was the Kpop stars.
I already knew what you were going to say before you said it.
Kpop stars.
Was good. I watched that as well.
It was really good. They got him in. They did. I kind of felt like a lot of the audience was only there for the Kpop stars because they kind of, this is Call of Duty in Korea. I don't know where it sat in Korea at the time in terms of popularity, but certainly the Kpop stars were more popular. What was the group even called?
No idea. I can't remember. There was something pretty popular, but not like the top.
Yeah, they weren't like top tier.
Wasn't like
They were
Girls' Generation or
no.
anything like that.
They had a song called Windy Day. So if you actually want to know,
Someone
go
will
look.
know.
Yeah, you can go look up Windy Day. They did a song. They were good. And there was a big crowd there for them. They played some COD, and the pro players showed them how to play. There were lots of great shots of them going like after getting kills and stuff. It was fantastic. And then they closed out the show and did another song, and that was it. And had a pretty good time. Ate a lot of fried chicken and drank beer. Very similar, to be honest, to what we used to do in Lidcombe. And yeah, that was pretty much it. So that was an exciting thing. They had like a wall of like past winners and stuff as well. Like it was a really cool place to get to go to and go, oh, this is, to me, like, this is one of the homes of esports. So I certainly don't want to understate how cool it was for me to be able to go there and stand on that stage and,
Work on that stage.
Yeah, it was a cool thing to have. So I'm very happy I did it. And it was just pretty stressful, to be honest.
So from one cool thing to another, then you come back from Korea, and you obviously at that point must have dove straight into IEM Sydney prep, because you say you've been in Korea in about February. Well, we know that by May, IEM Sydney 2017 rolls around. And so at this point, it's just absolute chaos in the ESL office. I know that you're quite largely involved in the planning and execution of IEM Sydney at that point. So talk to me a little bit about what's going on in ESL at that time and how this sort of all comes about and what everyone's thinking and how everyone's running around with like a chicken with their head off, or, the lack of a better term, I suppose.
Yeah, look, certainly one of the more stressful times of my life. I'm sure I had nothing on what the actual guys like Brad and Nick, who were putting on IEM as, the guys actually coming through and having to execute the plan. But there was a lot for me of managing, in my role of dealing with partners and sponsors and stuff. Pretty much like all of those expo booths. That's what you're looking at. So all of the expo stuff, all of the tech stuff, working through those partners was a pretty full-on job. I also have a bad habit of sticking my nose in and giving, my 2 cents on a lot of topics. So yeah.
That's what I was alluding to in part one, where I was saying, you're the kind of guy that's almost infamous for giving opinions within ESL.
Some of them are really good opinions, though. Some of them people might say are less good. But I always want to at least provide, like, that sounds okay, but what about this way? This way to me sounds better. What's it? And I'm very willing to fight for my side until someone can convince me that I'm wrong. So that's probably frustrating for people. I'm sure it is frustrating for people, but the hope is that in the end, the result is better 90% of the time. That's kind of the point. So I think back to IEM Sydney the first time. Obviously, everything's always harder the first time. I didn't even want to think about some of the work those the guys did to get it off the ground, but it was pretty full on. Like expo booths, so many expo booths, really, for what it was. All of the different things that were going on. Obviously, at the same time, everyone was in the studio. Everyone was in, all of a sudden there's 50 people extra in the office. We've got all of these pro players in the office as well. Everything's pretty hectic, and just trying to get, just creating aspects of the whole thing from scratch. Yeah. The first time around, you have to create all of the floor plans, all of the seating plans, all of the, the bits and pieces. Yeah, what do the tickets look like? What are the types of tickets? What do they get? What's in the goodie bag? How much does it cost? Where do they sit?
What merch are we going to sell?
Yeah, what are the, and then there's just all of the problem is that I don't think people realize is the number of layers that this all needs to go through. It's not just like...
it's not just ESL.
It's not just someone at ESL decides a thing and we do it. There's a lot of people, even when you do stuff at a venue, it's their house. You play by their rules. So.
You need approval from the venue, then you need approval from your partners or your clients, and then you need approval from HQ, and then you need approval from the domestic office as well. So it's all just, everyone's kind of got to have a finger in the pie in a way. And you're just one small part of that.
Something goes wrong, it goes all the way up the chain, right? Or it goes around through someone else, through a partner, and it comes back. So you want to try and make sure that it's the best it can be from the start, because everyone, if something goes wrong, everyone's impacted. So,
Yep.
But it was a great show. It was sick, and still, I think for me to this day, probably the coolest thing that we've gotten to do. Like being able to, I was fortunate enough to be able to stand there and watch like the first
opening,
and you'd be like, finally the games are kicking off. We're here. We've done it. This is great.
Did you nearly cry?
Almost cry. Well, it is one of those when you think, firstly, the work's almost done, right? There's only 2 days left of this. This has been going for months and it's almost over. But at the same time, really, it's like, hey, all of this, everything that everyone's done, has come to this awesome thing. And then you're actually proud of the thing that is on as well. So
I think I had one of those sort of almost emotional moments. Like I wouldn't say I cried, but I had this sort of feeling inside myself, like this is what we've been working towards for 5 years now.
Yeah.
And, obviously it's bigger than just me. It's bigger than just you. It's kind of everyone within ANZ Esports, and it's finally happening. And it's certainly, I think it was a success. Let's put it that way. IEM 2017 was a success. I want to touch on one of the minor aspects of IEM Sydney 2017 that might have also been considered a success. And I think it was actually largely thanks to you, is the Twitch party. If you remember. This was probably your finest moment, because you never stopped bringing it up, I felt like.
Mate,
but you were leading the Twitch party.
I forgot planning. I did that. I forgot I got given 10 days to plan the Twitch party. And I did it. And it was great. I think it was great anyway. It took a great number of IM volunteers as well to help put it on. And those guys worked real hard. But literally, just very much, because I don't even think it was announced until the day that it was on.
I remember going around in the stadium handing out flyers, because I was doing that like interview sort of Facebook Live job.
Yeah.
So I was around the whole thing like all the time, and they just gave me like 500 flyers to give to people that like I knew were part of this CS scene. I was like, hey, do you want to come to the Twitch party? Here's the info. And like everyone sort of eventually found out. But it kind of popped off.
It got to like 9 o'clock or something, and there was a line like 200 meters long of people waiting to get in. And so that was probably the toughest part, trying to work out like who the Twitch partners were and manage, because we had the list and stuff. So that was pretty average. I'm trying to get through that. But the fact that it was literally, booked the venue, booked all the staff. Just my one benefit, obviously, was that I was like a wedding DJ back in the day, which sounds really lame, but a lot of that is party planning
events. Yeah,
that's what it is. So I was fortunate that I could go through, and I kind of had an idea of what we needed just to get us off the ground. Like if we have a space, if we can have video games, we need a DJ. Let's have some sick lighting, because I'm a big lighting guy. The venue was cool. We were able to put the replay on the screens. I think we had poker, right? Poker and blackjack and stuff, just because it was like looking for things to fill up this space, right? Booked a guy who had game machines and pool tables and stuff, and I think he had DDR, and
I remember the DDR.
Just booked everything, and everyone just started turning up, and it put it all together. And then there was like 6 of us there on the day, and we put out like 100 stickers all over the place. I've still got them, right? I still have these. Where are they? I have like 50 of these of Twitch, and I've got Twitch coasters.
Wow.
And
that was a fat stack as well.
I have IEM coasters. Oh yeah, this is what's left over. Big shout out to the print shop at Harvey Norman, Auburn, who got these printed for me in 2 days. Made their own die, got it done. Wouldn't have got this done without them. So big shout out to them. I still have those. I still have a bunch of big stickers, because I was like, well, I'll save this for next time, right? They were just sitting in my office at work for ages, and then we didn't do it next time. And I still have shout out to Laura Scott for printing out and cutting out all of those little handheld. Hang on.
I think he's going to find them. Oh, these ones. The Pog emotes.
Yeah.
I have some great photos with those.
Yeah, well, you've got them on your thing. I've still got a bunch, right? So she, and again, I've just been, oh, look at this.
Kappa, yeah, Kappa Ross.
Kappa Ross. I've just been holding on to them because...
It's a memory, right?
Yeah, well, I thought we might use them again. And now we're like years later and I've got all this stuff. Yeah.
That's literally you now.
Clearly don't need. So it's here. I'm holding on to it for when we need it. Yeah, but it was really good. Everyone turned up. I think the Twitch guys liked it. Well did, and we got through and turned up the next day and went back to work. Right. So overall pretty positive. But yeah, that was pretty hectic. That was a pretty hectic one for sure.
Yeah. All right.
Just a whole other party that you would normally plan for ages, and that would be your thing to do. But then, all of the other IEM stuff. So
to your credit, I would say it's probably the second best Twitch party that I've been to. Obviously behind the PAX 2016 Twitch party, which was the one in the arcade. I don't know if anything's ever going to top that, but this was a pretty good one.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
Anyway, so after this, things die down for a little bit, but then Overwatch World Cup 2017 rolls around. And I want to sort of touch on this very briefly, but not go in too far in depth because this was your first and I believe only time actually being a talent manager or a talent handler. So we had all the big boys from what was going to become Overwatch League sort of over here in Sydney, and we were talent managing for these guys. And what was, the funniest story for me, the most interesting story out of this was that Jameson, who didn't end up doing much more in Overwatch, but he's still sort of working in esports. We had to get everyone's order, right, for their coffee. And his coffee order, which was actually tea as I remember, was some sort of normal tea, might have been Earl Grey or English breakfast or whatever. But the specific caveat was with honey and lemon. And for the life of us, we couldn't find a lemon, obviously, because we're in the middle of Star Casino. So what ended up happening, Ben, is that you bought this lemon from home. And I don't know if you've ever been reimbursed for that.
I've never been reimbursed for the lemon. You and I put on talent managing duty. Obviously, they had a proper talent handler who worked for Blizzard at the time. But we were obviously designated as useless
runners, really.
And yeah, what else were we there for other than to do this? Because I had no sponsors to manage.
What does Elfish Guy do when he's not casting?
Yeah, so we did a lot of taking coffee orders, taking them down to get deals, sitting in the talent room, and actually everyone, to their credit, was particularly nice to us. And because it's not always the case, right? It's not always the case when you're at the events with the A tier talent, and we're kind of just there whatever. I do remember Zoe getting mad that her coffee order was wrong. I think she thought maybe someone drank it one of the days. So the next day I just got her 2 coffees and said,
"This is what they gave us.
Here's 2, pick one," sort of thing. I think part of the problem was that Aussie coffee is kind of different to what you get overseas.
Yeah.
You can't necessarily order the same thing because you can't get drip coffee, for example. It's all espresso coffee, but
yeah. And here's me who doesn't drink coffee, and people are saying I'll get a latte, americano, flat white, fucking whatever, and I'm just thinking I don't know what any of these words mean because I don't drink coffee. So at least you're a coffee snob, and so you sort of knew what was going on a little bit.
I just ended up some of them you just couldn't get. There were orders that maybe were made with drip coffee in America, and the counterpart coffee was, I don't know, something else in Oz. So I just had to make it up. We got through it in the end. Everyone was super nice. I remember ZP saying to us, anyone who's a friend of Mitch is a friend of mine. That's the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me. So anyway, so it's good to see ZP back in the action. Anyway, so yeah, but that was a sick event, and Australia made it through to the Overwatch World Cup as well. Even better.
Yeah, good stuff. Put on a good event. Yeah, largely not thanks to us, but
no,
oh well.
Did very little to contribute, but we were there.
So that's good. Okay,
Yeah.
one event that we did contribute quite a lot to, and we jumped forward in time a little bit to the end of 2017 to December, is your first Crossfire Stars gig outside of the Philippines one, which wasn't really like a big sort of a tournament. This was the Crossfire Stars Grand Finals in China, in Xi'an, and the first time that you went to one of these Grand Finals, which incidentally the subsequent 2 years, 2018, 2019, you have been to following that. So you must have done a pretty good job at this first one.
I was definitely adequate.
This first one was insane. If you remember, this was the massive fucking stage, probably the biggest stage that you've ever seen at that point.
The biggest, probably the biggest esports stage that I for an event I've been to, whether I've worked it or
Seen
watched
it. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe like if you look at maybe like League of Legends Worlds, yes.
Maybe they have a bigger stage,
Bigger stage. I don't know if they had more LED panels though. Like,
because
this was insane. This was like what would you say? It was kind of like a 45-degree angled stage.
Yep.
Where essentially the whole floor of the stage is LED, and then the whole slanted wall of the stage is LED, and then the plate, like they had, obviously it would go dark, and they'd do this crazy light show. And the stage would light up. And when we say LED, I mean LED screens, not just like LEDs, big screens. And then lasers would shine, and they'd like cut out holes in the stage, and the player booths would come out from it and then turn around. Yep. It was actually insane. And I had to stage host, which is look, it was fully scripted as well. And a lot of it was like thanking places in China, thanking people who had sponsored, like words that I didn't necessarily know how to pronounce and had to work through. I think the toughest thing was that I was hosting with a co-stage host, which is funny because before I was complaining that, you're up there by yourself. But particularly when it's scripted, that's still pretty rough, right? Where you're trying to go line for line with someone on a script that you're essentially reading off. That was a really long show. That was like 4 or 5 days or something. And I feel like I was hosting like 9 a.m. through.
They were long days, yeah.
Yeah, they
were
were
always
long
long
days.
days.
Yeah. And then you'd host all day, and then you'd rehearse the next day's show at night.
In the evening, yeah. And then you would come back like 5 hours later, and you'd be there hosting again.
Yeah, it was pretty rough. It was a epic show. And then the finals had drones. Light up drones that flew and did like a flying countdown. Yeah. So yeah, it was very, very awesome. And I was lucky to get to do it. But I was particularly relieved when the following year I was not the stage host. And
you were the desk host instead.
Yeah.
One of the interesting parts of that trip was that we got to play pool with a Chinese dude in the hotel lobby who was selling cigarettes. So I don't know if that really is worth talking too much about, but that's just one of those random things.
Side hustle, right? He had like the cigarette desk at whatever. What even hotel do we stay at? I don't know.
Sheraton, I think it was.
Yeah, I think it was the Sheraton. And he manned the cigarette desk,
which is obviously a thing in China.
Yeah, and when he wasn't, or not when he wasn't, but it just meant that he could just go play pool with you whenever he wants. So
yeah, so he would see us over at the pool table, and he'd like sort of waddle over because he could see us from that cigarette desk, and every night he would come over and play pool for some reason.
Play pool. It was good. I enjoyed it. That one was a bit of a different. I feel like we didn't get the most of it because it was in Xi'an, right? Which is, I don't know geography of China, but I would say it's like northeast-ish. It's a bit colder. It's colder than like Shanghai. It's quite a way in. I feel like we had like a 4 or 5 hour flight from.
Yeah, it's like northeast.
Yeah. And it's where the Terracotta Warriors were. So, because we didn't have translators with us all the time, and because we were just potatoes, to be honest, we didn't we could have probably got a taxi out.
Yeah.
And we're much better now, to be honest.
Just need experience going overseas a few times into countries that don't speak the same language.
It was like a 40-minute taxi ride out to where it was, and we just didn't do it, which is a shame. We probably should have, but we had like 1 day off between getting there and the show days. But some of my best event photos are from that. It's a shame I didn't have a beard because I look like a goose.
Yeah.
But you go back and you're like, that was pretty cool. I think I only stuffed up like one thing, and it was a pretty rough show in terms of lots of stuff going on.
I can
I remember
remember
the
you.
very end was like getting all 50 participants up on
Yes.
stage or something. And I'm trying
And
to
delegates and whatever
get
else.
all of the delegates, and you're like going through, here's the third place check, here's the second place check, here's the first place check for
Models.
one game. And then there's another game, and there's another game. And then you're trying to manage like promo girls who are supposed to be drawing balls out of a hat. And there's a whole process about, we can talk to that later, I suppose. But there's a whole process to, if you get this ball and it matches this team with that team, then they can't play. You have to put the ball back in.
It's tough.
And it was like a live draw for the finals, but there's like 50 different results, but only half of them are allowed. I don't know. It's just one of those things where you got to go with the flow, right? So, yeah.
And we went with the flow. We
We
went
did.
with the flow all the way through to 2018. Let's go early 2018. We've come back from China. We've had our Christmas break again. And this is when Overwatch Contenders starts, Ben. So
Oh, yeah.
this is when there was a bit of a community outcry. People were not too pleased to see. This obviously involves both of us, but this is in retrospect with Sandman. So let's just say this result. People weren't happy to see you casting. They weren't happy to see me casting as well. But we'll talk about this from your perspective. So what's your take on that? The community outcry around Overwatch Contenders when it first started.
Yeah, I can understand it to a degree, but at the same time, casting's not that easy, irrespective of like game knowledge. Like casting itself is not easy. I don't even think there was anyone necessarily in Sydney at the time either who was keen to do it. I think that's part of it. Like having someone, do you want to move and live in Sydney? Because that's what we had to do this. So it's one thing to live somewhere else and want to be a part of it, but if you're not there, it's not necessarily, these things are expensive to put on. So you just got to find the balance between what makes sense. And, if someone who really wanted to cast Overwatch was living in Sydney and kind of, put their hand up, I think maybe it would have turned out differently. But as we've kind of seen, it's tough to even get that to happen, I suppose. So I can understand why the community felt that way. For me, I tried really hard through that time to level up my Overwatch knowledge. Obviously, I retired from casting the week to week, and you guys got Smash in, which obviously was a bigger depth of knowledge to come into that one. With the world being how it is at the moment, unfortunately, he moved back to Melbourne, right? And he couldn't keep doing it. So, and I jumped back in, and I've been excited to do it, and I'm kind of enjoyed casting Overwatch more. I can understand why a community's like, hey, I'd rather someone do this who knows a little bit more. And I think particularly for like tier 2 anything, right? The community who watches the tier 2 broadcasts are normally like your hardcore community. They are, the reason they're watching it is because they are, they live and breathe Overwatch.
They already care.
Yeah, they really care. They know the game better than I do because they're playing more than I am. And yeah, that makes sense. Whilst when you look at things like Overwatch League, the audience who is watching that might be, you've still got this audience who maybe is a casual Overwatch viewer. And you're trying to address that audience at the same time as you're trying to address your more hardcore fans, where I feel like tier 2 is really that core demo. If you've got 600 people watching an Aussie broadcast, then probably those 600 people follow the scene or are part of the scene. They are the players. They are the community around that core audience. So I can understand why they would be keen for someone who is part of their community to do their stuff. But I think in the end we almost got there, and hopefully it's entertaining and whatnot. And when we do the big events and we bring over the other guys, right? Every time we've had those finals at Mio or IEM, whatever, we've kind of rounded it out with Avril and Pixie and whatnot as well, and Smash has been there, and RQT's been there as well. So it's good to get those guys on board. It did take Smash a while to get into it. It takes a while. Like it's not a natural thing to do, right?
Not easy.
Yeah, but then we sent him on the grind over to China, and he came back a different man.
Yeah, one with a good hairstyle. Anyway, we'll move on then to MEO. We're starting to run out of time, so I'm going to skip over a few events. We've skipped over IEM Sydney 2018. It's kind of more of the same, although a little bit easier, I guess, than 2017. Move into 2018 MEO, and this is the first year of MEO. So is it kind of the same deal, like as what we saw from IEM Sydney 2017, where you're just trying to get everything done off the ground, and then once it's off the ground, it's a lot easier?
MEO was rougher though, because the planning for MEO came right off the back of IEM, and a lot of the guys were on leave, like they'd accrued a lot of leave. They worked really hard. Everyone deserved it, but we still needed to get this stuff on sale. And IEM is a very structured thing that, like, this is what the show is.
People know what it is already, yeah.
Yeah, you have a brand, you know what it is. Whilst MEO, we were creating this brand. So not only are you having to create the aspects of the on-ground show from scratch, where do things go? What are the timings? What are the ticket types? What do you get? How much does it cost? All of those sorts of things. But you're trying to create the whole vibe of the show. What is this show? And that was probably the biggest, the toughest part of MEO year one was finding that brand identity. I actually think it turned out pretty well in the end, because I think it does have a brand identity that was distinct from what IEM in Sydney was. And even when you see the two of them combined, you still know that the two different aspects are, it's a slightly different audience necessarily. Mm-hmm. You know, that hardcore CS fan base who's coming to IEM, and for me, MEO was all about families and mums and dads and kids, and the broader esports community, kind of more of like that festival atmosphere where you can come in. You're not necessarily buying a ticket because you want to sit in a seat and watch 6 to 8 hours of esports of the same game. What you actually want to do is walk around and experience what is gaming. Like, why is my 13-year-old son playing Fortnite 10 hours a day? Like, is there a future here? Wow, oh wow, look at these people. What do you mean they're winning millions of dollars? Like, all of these sorts of things. And that was what MEO was about. So I kind of feel like we kind of just had to get tickets on sale, and I remember there weren't very many people in the office, and it was like maybe 2 or 3 of us coming up with all these different things for MEO, just to get it going. And then obviously you had time from when tickets went on sale to what we ended up coming up with. And year one really helped solidify for us what it was. And then year two was a better version of that, I suppose, because that identity, you really got, when you saw who turned up and you saw what they were after, and you saw how much people enjoyed certain aspects of it or things that you could do better. I think that really helped. So yeah, MEO was a big one. We had to do it it's a very different show. And there's no global team to help on that. That's literally us, essentially. Us and the guys at TEG, and everyone who helped us along the way. So very different, but still, it's cool that we were able to come up with that sort of thing. And now I think it's even more exciting that now they're together, but because we managed to create these two sort of separate identities, we can still, if IEM had just come to Melbourne by itself, we wouldn't have had this other thing that we could cater for a different audience. But now we've created this other thing that caters for a sort of different audience and a different demo. And it exists. I don't think it would have existed if we just simply brought IEM across. So I think that's nice to have. So yeah,
it is nice to have. And I find it interesting that you mentioned Fortnite there as well, because it's a good segue for us to move into what ended up happening in 2019. Again, we're skipping over Crossfire Stars 2018 Grand Finals, but it's more of the same as what we saw in 2017.
More of the same, slightly less work for me. Yeah. It was a better experience.
every time we go, it gets better, and Ben gets to see a little bit more of China, so he's quite happy about that.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the Fortnite Australian Open in 2019. Now, this was a big, big event. Obviously, the first time working with Tennis Australia, first sort of foray into Fortnite for you as well. And it's sort of the first time where we really feel like mainstream sports and esports are starting to collide, which is really starting to become a lot more prevalent now in 2020.
Yeah, that was actually a sick event. And was very fortunate to be a part of it. Up until that point, hadn't done, to be fair, that much Fortnite, right? Like that wasn't my thing. But stage hosting, I suppose, was. You'd done a bit of Fortnite casting, Jordan, but probably not.
Not very much.
Yeah, not as much as you maybe had liked. But that was a crazy event. Like when you think about the amount of influences, it's the sort of thing that you always want to do. But you have to be able to justify it, and obviously tennis were able to justify it. So that was awesome to be able to bring something like that. And they put in a lot of work to get everyone on board. Flew out Dr. Lupo and all the influencers from around the world, all the Aussie influencers. The first year was open, so it was like 2 days of play. Like the turnaround of the stage and things like that, and the fact that it was a tennis court. And the thing is, right, it's funny because everything takes up a lot of space. When you think about all the things that you need to bring in for a show, it takes up a lot of space. And normally, like you hire out a venue and, you get a floor plan and you can kind of put things where you want. It's always pretty tight, but you do the best you can. But an event like the Australian Open, there is so much going on that all the space is taken. So to then bring in an esports event and all the bits and pieces that come like that, it's a pretty squishy fit, but they did a great job. The stage looks sick, and that was a fun one to host as well. And I was very lucky to get to do it. And I think it went pretty well, to be honest. I think everyone was pretty happy with it. I don't think I did that bad a job, even if Tifu, I think, spent hours putting on me on his co-stream. But other than that, it was fine.
Yeah, and you got invited back next year, so I'm sure you did okay.
Got to do it to you.
Yeah. Starting to run out of time, though, Ben, so I'm going to, again, jump through a few of these quick events very quickly. You did Esports Ready with Ellison, where you were sort of trying to teach people a little bit about esports. Yep. Let's just very quickly touch on, what was the purpose of that?
I think that we kind of felt that there was a lot of bad advice or a lot of advice out there from people who didn't necessarily know what they were talking about. And whilst I'm not going to say, I'm not a teaching expert, I don't know how to teach people stuff, but I do know esports, and so did Ellison. So it was just, just a thing. We just wanted to do a thing, and it just seemed like the sort of stuff that we could talk about. Okay. So I don't know whether anyone got anything out of it. It was fun to do. I enjoyed it. Hopefully some people learnt bits and pieces. I think we touched on a few different things. Certainly aspects. There's certainly aspects of stuff we did in there that you probably don't get an opportunity to experience or to learn how to do unless you've done it. And there were only so many people who got to do those things, I guess. If that makes sense. You can't learn how to do it till you do it. There's only so many people who get to do it who can teach it. So it was good to be able to bring those people on and chat to them and, sort of get their insight and whatnot. And I don't know, hopefully some people watched it. Certainly helped that Livy B kept rating us with 300 viewers halfway through every night. That got the viewer count right up. Thanks, Livy. But that was fun.
All right. So then you jump through MEO 2019, Crossfire Stars 2019. Again, sort of more of the same for both of these two events. We've talked about them quite extensively.
2019.
Well, IEM 2019 is in there as well, I suppose.
I just want to say this, by the way. I'm just going to put this out there, okay? The idea to assign seats for premium seating at IEM was my idea. And it's not my fault that you didn't read your tickets. I'm sorry.
There you go.
This whole plan to this, right? And I'm just going to talk through it. I want to touch on this one.
Demon's on a rage.
I'm just going to... So if you're buying... We were pretty good with tickets at IEM because we had this huge arena. So we allowed premium ticket holders to go essentially wherever they want, right? So if you bought a premium ticket, you could sit in the premium ticket zone. If you bought a premium ticket, you could sit in the general admission zone. Like normally that doesn't happen, right? And venues kind of like, what are you doing? Just like people sit where they buy a ticket, and we're like, no. We want people to sort of be able to go where they want to go. But the whole premise was that you bought a seat that was allocated, so you could go and do what you want, and then you came back and your seat was there. Like that was one of the benefits. If you just wanted to go and sit with your mates, then you could go and still sit in GA. You know what I mean? If you're like, oh, I just want to sit with whoever. If you wanted to sit next to someone specifically, then you buy the ticket together.
Like at a normal sporting event.
Like at literally any other event. And I don't know. I can understand that maybe first year people were like, well, this is not how you did it, blah, 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 blah. That all makes sense. But at the same time, it literally said that's what it was. So if you want to blame someone, you can blame me because that was my idea. I still stand by it, even if you didn't like it. So I don't know. But
suck it up, everyone.
Nah, it's okay. I understand. But like that was the point. You had the choice of both worlds. You could do either. You could go sit with the people or sit your thing. So that's what I want. A seat that if I went to a signing session, I could come back and I knew that my seat was still there and we were Gucci. Anyway, whatever. It's all in the past. But if you want to blame someone, you can blame me for it.
All right. Well, then 2020 rolls around and we're here and it's coronavirus time. So pretty much everything that Ben wanted to do this year is cancelled in a way. So there hasn't been that much going on. What is going on for you this year? Like, what are you up to at the moment?
Actually, this has been a really busy year. Funnily enough, because obviously everything's changed, right? So everyone's had plans. Everyone that we work with had plans, and their plans change. So there was a lot of work to be done in terms of helping other partners change the plans that they had made. Maybe their plans hadn't involved us originally because, you're doing something. Oh, no, well, we're going to do this big event somewhere. But now, you can't necessarily get Aussie teams to wherever you need them to be. So, we've been doing a lot of content locally, and it's been great to see, Australian and New Zealand players kind of not get left out. There's been a lot of stuff come back to us to run so that people have had things to play in when normally they might be traveling overseas, but they haven't been able to. So it's been a very big year in terms of sort of like publisher events that way. I think we're still pretty lucky in Australia that we are in a point where things aren't amazing, but, it looks to be getting better. Yeah. I did my whiskey show, as you can see by my thing. Look, more people should watch it because like 3 people watch it, and it's great.
Where can we watch it?
Sorry?
Where can we watch it?
Oh, you can watch it on my great channel, twitch.tv/TheLodgeTV, and we discuss whiskey on Wednesdays. Anyway, it just, for me, that was sort of like a lockdown project where I just want something to do, and I thought, you know what, get back into streaming, give me something, and anyone who sort of watches me, not watches me, but has me on social knows that I share a lot of whiskey related things. So I thought I'm not an expert on whiskey, but I like talking about it and drinking it. So let's do a show. And then last night I got to play Call of Duty with Nick Kyrgios and Mitch Robinson and Mitch Austin. So that was kind of crazy. That sort of came out of nowhere too. So
yeah. So first you've gone from being the king of esports commentary to being one of Australia's biggest sports stars. I saw on one of the tweets as well.
Yeah. Look, it did say that, but then another tweet said, "And our moderator."
And Ben Green.
Yeah, that's me. That's me. But it went okay. So that was good too. So yeah, 2020, I think, as for everyone, has not gone to plan necessarily. Certainly not at all.
But it's been okay.
Look, it's you look around at literally what's happening to other countries and whatnot, and you have to, or just the fact that, not sick. You just can take what you can't get too upset about things, I suppose, even though it's disappointing. I need to reflect and say, hey, yeah, it could be worse, which often the case it can be. And hopefully it doesn't get worse. And hopefully 2021 is awesome and we can move forward. And, I'm kind of happy with my role that I'm doing at the moment. A lot of publisher stuff, a lot of really esports orientated stuff. Still doing my odd casting, still doing some hosting. yeah, I think overall, it's been good, and hopefully, yeah, years to come, it's gets a little bit better. My hope for Aussie esports from here is that 2021 or 2022 are in a better spot because of the things that happened this year. Like this year sucks, right? For any number of reasons, but I think it's meant that a lot of organizations have looked at this space who maybe would have waited another 1, 2, 3 years to get into the space, but kind of forced their hand early. And I think the results for them, they've gone, oh, that actually worked pretty well. So my hope is that as a result, next few years, because they've already sort of dipped their toe in the water, that it's going to be in a better spot. We'll see whether it plays out. Maybe the world's just going to be awful for another, whoever knows, Jordan. Hopefully not, but at least we have esports, right?
That's right.
At least we have this industry that we love that is about it's something that we can do, not necessarily from the other side of the world. That's pretty rough, but at least from home. So we got that going for us, so it counts for something.
Okay, well, we're getting very close to the end of our discussion then, Ben, and I have
Yes.
2 unrelated questions to your career that I want to ask before we go. The first one is, what is your biggest pet peeve of people within the esports community? What annoys you the most?
Oh,
because I know you hate people in general, so.
Look, if I wish you'd asked me to make a list beforehand. No, I think, and it's this is going to seem unfair because I'm sure I do it to industries that aren't mine, but there is just so much that goes on behind the scenes that obviously the community can't know about, in terms of the amount of work that goes into things, the amount of hoops that you need to jump through to get things off the line, the cost of stuff, how expensive things are. And so often I feel like expectations don't match what the reality is. And instead of, communities necessarily being grateful for things that they get, they're upset that they don't get exactly what they wanted. And I'm sure I do the same for like video games, right? I'm like, man, I can't believe that this game has blah, blah, blah in it, when in actual fact it's some, crazy feat of a game that has taken 10 years to develop and no one else is, whatever. Like that sort of thing. So I'm sure I do it to other things. And I think just people being ungrateful for what's come before them, and expecting to be able to just step into things. The amount of times where people have said, and this probably is the key one, no one's given me an opportunity to do Blur. We're literally living, this is a digital space. You can almost get your start from anything. You don't need to be given an opportunity. Create your own opportunity. Almost everyone who is here at the moment has done it themselves. There will be definitely instances where people are hard done by. But if you haven't tried, then why are you expecting someone to help you? Help yourself first. And then, show us that you care enough to do something of your own accord. Because that's what I think a lot of this is. When people say no one's ever given me a chance to shoutcast, I'd love to shoutcast. Cool. Well,
do it.
Show me something you've shoutcast. Oh, well, no one's given me a chance. Well, that's, give yourself a chance if you expect someone else to give you a chance first. At least start somewhere. That's my one, because the takeaway is there is not that I'm angry about that, but the takeaway is that there is so much opportunity in this space that you shouldn't let someone else not giving you an opportunity be the reason that you don't succeed. Create your own opportunities. We're not all going to live the overseas esports dream and earn hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars. You could just be Sandman and Elfish Guy, living in apartments in Sydney, eating Korean barbecue once a month. But if that's what you want, then go for it, because there's nothing stopping you. That's my 2 cents.
The very last question then, Ben, as we almost say goodbye to In Retrospect with Sandman, is how many times have you thought about quitting esports?
100. A lot.
And why? What was
it's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work, yeah. Stress?
It's a lot of work. It's a lot of stress. It's the amount of work in another industry pays more. And it's not just about money, but it's just lifestyle, right? And being able to live. And I, I would love to find a job that 5 p.m. comes around and you're done. You know what I mean? You don't think about it anymore. And it's very easy to look back and go, well, you could, yeah, but with that comes money or whatever. You can, there are definitely plenty of jobs that pay better than esports that lock off at a certain time and you're done. And it's not your whole life. I certainly make this my whole life, so part of that is on me. But a lot of it just requires it, whether that's working with people in different time zones, whether it's the fact that half our products are live between 6 p.m. and midnight, yet the business side occurs 9 till 5. Any number of things. It's events, it's catching up, it's every time you work a weekend and you have, days to theoretically that you have off later. They're weekdays, but you still have work to do. There's still people who want to call you. There's emails to reply to. There's other projects that you want to see happen. And if you don't reply to the email today, even though it's your day off, well, that's, today's Friday when we're filming this. I've got emails now at 3:30. Today's my day off. I should reply to them, because if I don't reply to them now, they won't see them on their Friday tomorrow in America, which means I don't get a response till Tuesday afternoon or something next week. And you've lost days. You just can't do it. And I'm sure that's with anything else. But anyway, that's it. That's the reasons. But we're here because we love it and we wanted to see it succeed. And hopefully we can do in retrospect in 2030, Jordan. We'll look back at the last 10 years and you'll be old with 5 kids and I'll look about the same age. Hopefully we'll have a fun time. So we'll do it again in 10 years.
Indeed. That is the end of In Retrospect with Ben Green. Ben, you got any final shout outs, thoughts that you want to make?
Not really. Other than if you want to do the esports, just do it. And it sounds dumb, but you can. Just start doing it. It's always been the way. Even more now than ever, there are any number of opportunities. They're not always the opportunity you want, but take it and see where it leads.
Take it and you might find the opportunity. For example, I took an opportunity to cast World of Tanks. And now I'm here being able to cast Counter-Strike, which is what I really wanted to do. Anyway, at the end of all of that discussion, you can find Ben on @BenGreenAU on Twitter. He's The Lodge TV on Twitch. Who knows how long that's going to last, because I know Ben's the kind of person that starts things and then doesn't finish them. So maybe if you're watching this a year later, it might not be a thing anymore. But I'm sure he still has a Twitter. So make sure you go and follow him there. I've been Elfish Guy. You can follow me on Twitter. Make sure you like and comment and do all those things and subscribe and say all the nice things so that the YouTube algorithm likes me.